We're recording. I want to welcome everybody that happens to be tuned in to our webinar here for the Jewish Historical Society of the Upper Midwest annual meeting. We have an annual meeting every year to vote in potential new board members and then do a little activity so we can make it worthwhile joining us. So I'm going to officially start this meeting. Hopefully everybody is there and everybody can hear me and we can move forward. I'm just checking here to see who's chatting. All right, so call the meeting to order. Welcome everybody. This is going to be a quick meeting section of this event. The first thing we need to do is to vote in new board members. So I'm going to let everyone know that the board recommends the addition of Sheldon Schreiberg as a new board member. Sheldon, if you're out there, hi. He is a longtime member of the Jewish community of the North Side, grew up on the North Side, went off to DC, now lives in California. But he travels here often and has a wealth of history and knowledge about both the Jewish community here as well as things that go on across the country. So because of our format here, I'm going to make a motion to vote in Sheldon. I'm going to ask for a second. Anyone in chat that wants to second it? Any member of the community, member of the JHSUM can vote. So I'm asking for anyone to second the motion. I have a second from Susan Weinberg and Kate Dietrich. I got lots of seconds. So Susan, you got in there first. Now I'm going to open it up for discussion. If anyone has any comments or questions, you can use the chat about Sheldon. I'll give it a minute to see if anyone has any comments about Sheldon. As we tick through here. All right, I don't see any comments, so I'm going to vote in reverse here. I'm going to say, if you accept Sheldon as a new board member, don't do anything. That will be a positive vote. If you have a negative vote, if you want to vote no, please use your chat and let me know how many people are voting no. We've got about 50 people that have signed up. So we've got 50 votes. Again, the full membership votes in new board members. Anyone have an issue with Sheldon? Okay, with that, I don't see any negative votes, so I'm going to assume we have a positive vote for Sheldon, and Sheldon is now our new board member. With that, I'm going to close the meeting, and I'm going to introduce our executive director, Robin Dorshow, and take it away, Robin.
Hello, good afternoon. I'm Robin Dorshow, and I'm the director of the Jewish Historical Society of the Upper Midwest. Thank you for joining us today for our annual meeting. I have to apologize. My dog just got out of the yard, so if there's a lot of noise in the background, it's my family rounding her up. So excuse me. So like last year's meeting, we're back on Zoom. And we hope to have back in-person options in the near future, whenever it feels safe to do so. But in the meantime, we will remain on Zoom with programming and things like the meeting. We're thankful to have these kinds of platforms so we can come together in times like these, and we appreciate your understanding of any technical glitches that may occur. So I want to share a few highlights from the past year. Like so many organizations, we've pivoted completely, totally online, almost everything delivered via Zoom. Our internal meetings between staff, our board meetings, and all of our programming have pivoted to Zoom. Would have been hard to imagine last year when we were on Zoom for our annual meeting that we'd still be doing it a year later, but here we are. But there have been some silver linings. Specifically, we can reach people who would not otherwise be able to participate in our programs. People who are not necessarily in town, people who, for whatever reason, are unable to come to an in-person event. And then we've got the weather in Minnesota, so this really helps us quite a bit. We've actually welcomed participants from all over the country, really expanded our reach. And we plan to continue online programming even after we can get back in person. Because this is really, it has been a silver lining. It's really something wonderful that we can reach so many people. So the third, here's a couple things that have happened in the last year since we met. We've had a 3-part series on Jewish women who grew up in smaller communities. The third part of that program is coming up on November 14th. And as you can see, you can view the past JHSUM events. You can see on the screen at our YouTube channel. And if you'd like to attend the third segment, please register. And that's right up there on the screen. And very excitingly, JHSUM hired our first development director this year, Juliana Sellers. We love her energy and are excited about the doors she's helping open for JHSUM. So we're thrilled to have Juliana on staff. JHSUM is also currently working on a journal of the Aberdeen, South Dakota Jewish community and its congregation, B'nai Isaac. B'nai Isaac's been in continuous use for over 100 years, and it's quite a story. There are very few Jews left in Aberdeen, and we're really enjoying getting to know them and pulling their story together. We continue to facilitate our oral history recordings and to create new and interesting programming for the community. We're also, you got to stay tuned for more information on this, but we're considering our first permanent space for the Historical Society. So hopefully more to come in the coming year on that. So I'd like to thank the members of our board, terrific members of our board. Special thanks to Jamie Heilicher for everything that you do for JHSUM, and our terrific staff members, Julie Tarshish, Jamie Heilicher, Juliana Sellers. I appreciate both of you very much. So now to our program. Our program today features the work of Dale Bluestein and his company, Partnership Media. Dale is a native of Amherst, New York, which is near Buffalo. He attended the Rochester Institute of Technology, where he studied photography, graduated in 1985. He worked in New York City in a commercial photo studio, then moved back to Rochester and worked at the ABC affiliate. There he wrote and produced local commercials, In 1992, he interviewed with KMSP in Minneapolis for a creative services director position, and he became one of us, an Upper Midwest Jew. He worked there as a programming director and creative services director at KMSP Channel 9 for 10 years. Thereafter, he worked as director of content at Shop NBC, now known as Shop HQ. In 2008, Dale started his own small production company, Partnership Media, providing creative support and production services to small businesses, corporations, and nonprofits, and luckily to the Jewish Historical Society. We were incredibly fortunate to meet Dale in 2019 when we hired him to produce a video overview of the Historical Society in the Upper Midwest Jewish region. The resulting 11-minute video entitled "It Happened Right Here" premiered at our 35th anniversary celebration in September of 2019. It was met with rave reviews. We'll hear from Dale about his process and see a bit of his work this afternoon. But before I turn it over to Dale, I have to say that from the start, nearly 3 years ago, Dale has given 100% and then some to the Jewish Historical Society. That first 11-minute video has led to a video series and an ongoing relationship between the Jewish Historical Society and Dale Bluestein. And to see these spectacular videos, you can go to an address that will be popping up on the screen in a moment. And here we go. Here we go. So I recommend that you spend some time with these videos. They're beautiful, fantastic videos. The current 5 videos on our website include that original 11-minute film that I mentioned, and then a Jewish historical overview of St. Paul, a historical overview of Minneapolis, and one of the Dakotas. There's also a very interesting piece on the unique transformation of the B'nai Isaac Synagogue on the Iron Range in Virginia, Minnesota. And 2 more videos before the end of this year. They'll be coming out, so watch for them. One about Jewish summer camps, and the other about repairing the world as a Jewish value. So watch for those in coming months. So now, if I could, Dale, ask you to please remove the spotlight. I know you're not prepared for this, but if you would make it so we can all see you and see everyone else. Okay, are we here? Okay, thank you. So before turning the program over to Dale, we have a small token of our appreciation to present to him virtually. And here it is. It will get to him. It's currently with Jamie Heilacher, but one of a kind 8mm video camera lamp. And we love it. It's unique, just like you. And just wanted to let you know how very much we appreciate you.
What in the world? Well, this isn't how I have nothing prepared for this now.
That's okay. That's okay. So
Well, thank you.
Absolutely. And thank you.
Can't wait.
So last thing I'm going to say, that there will be an opportunity to ask questions at the end of the program. If you could please submit your questions through the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. It will bounce back to me after Dale's presentation, and I will get the questions to Dale. So now it's my pleasure to turn things over to the one and only Dale Bluestein.
Gosh. Well, thank you very much, Robin, and thank you for that unexpected gift. I'll say right at the top, working with the Jewish Historical Society has been kind of the dream for me. It's everything that I love to do. It's history, it's storytelling, it's production. I'm certainly very humbled to talk about all that we've done in the last year and a half here and now. It's funny because so much of this is done alone, researching it in the archives, on the road, driving, shooting in fields and on city streets. Most of the work is solitary, but it's nice to finally talk about it out loud with people, even though you're through my computer. So thank you for being here and listening. First, I guess I'd love to share, I don't want to call it a disclaimer, but a quick note as far as the work that we're doing. I like to be very upfront. I'm not a historian. I'm not a scholar, certainly not. I'm a guy with a camera, and now I've got a camera lamp, which I'm very excited about. But I'm just interested in things. I've always been, and I love using my tools to help communicate the things I'm interested in to other people. And before I go deep into what we've been doing, I really want to acknowledge the real scholars and historians who I've relied on, honestly, in the last year and a half. The books I've read and all this great information that is out there. I'm speaking of Marilyn Chiat and Linda Schloff, Ann Stanton. Of course, Gene Rosenblum has written a wonderful series, The Late High Berman. And Rabbi Gunther Platt, who had written, kind of literally wrote the book on so much. And all of those books are just off camera within reach that I use quite often. So today in our short time together, I want to kind of do three things. One, I want to give you a little tease, a little taste of the upcoming installment we have of It Happened Right Here. This one centers on Duluth and the Iron Range. The second thing I'd like to share is a little bit under the hood of what goes into these, the thought process of these videos. This is news to no one that this is a very big topic. There's a lot to tell, a lot of stories here. And I learned very quickly, and maybe the hard way, that you can't tell it all. If you try, you'll probably fail. It's not defeatism, but it's realism. And I think using that strategy, we can kind of hone in and really get the essence of these videos and make them watchable and relatable, and hopefully people will engage with our organization because of them. And the last thing I want to do is just share some anecdotes, some stories from the road, if you will, things that have happened to me in my discovery in the last year and a half. So without further ado, if forgive me, I'm directing as well. I'm going to queue up our share. Stand by. Okay, and enjoy this.
From an immigrant's perspective, St. Paul may have seemed like a far-off journey to make after arrival on the East Coast. But if St. Paul and its emerging twin, Minneapolis, were far, the city of Duluth must have seemed like an unimaginable stretch to undertake, some 150 miles to the north. It would add days of travel, offer little more than a handful of structures on mud streets, and was known for winters of mammoth snowstorms and some of the coldest temperatures that thermometers of the day could record. But once the railroads found their way to Duluth and the shores of Lake Superior became an established gateway to other cities, the promise of lumber and then iron ore to the north, Duluth rose to Minnesota's third most populated city. Julius Austrian arrived in Madeline Island in 1842. A merchant and storekeeper, he lived on the island for a number of years while investing in iron mines. He and his wife Hannah would then move to St. Paul, where they would be part of the founding members of the Jewish community there. The first Jews to officially call Duluth home were newlyweds, Bernard and Nettie Silverstein, who had traveled from Detroit via the Great Lakes steamer Meteor in 1870. During their honeymoon, they saw great promise in the developing city and decided to stay, establishing one of Duluth's first dry goods store. Silverstein partnered with Louis Bondy to establish the very successful department store Silverstein and Bondy, one of the city's most prominent clothiers.
Now I will hopefully I'm back. There we go. And I'm going to spotlight myself. There we go. So that was the little teaser clip from the latest installment, and I hope you'll have to tune in to find out what happens. Does Duluth become a city? It's a real cliffhanger, but that's our latest installment, and it will be prepared by the end of the month, and we'll be ready to share that. So I wanted to talk a little bit about really the thought process that goes into these, because as I said, all of these topics, whether it's Minneapolis or St. Paul or the Dakotas or the Iron Range, there's so much there. And the thought is really, where do you start? We always want to concentrate what's significant. How do you fit the entire story into a 10 to 12 minutes? And the answer is you really can't. But if I keep these questions on the top of my mind of what can I share in a relatively short period of time? What's interesting about the history? What will make people say, you know, I didn't know that. That's really interesting. And that's why that is the way it is. Those are the kind of questions that I would love people to say to themselves out loud as they watch these things. A quick anecdote: the great writer David Mccullough, he got his start writing. The historian, he wrote books of John Adams and all that. When he was in college, he went to do research on the Jonestown flood. He's from Pittsburgh, so the area is not far from where he grew up, and he couldn't find a book on it. So that's really was his impetus to become a writer and a researcher and a historian and he wrote the book that he would want to read. That was his quote. And that's always stuck with me. And that's kind of how I look at these videos. They are things that I would love to watch and hopefully communicate to people my interest and excitement for all this rich history. The other thing I'd like to talk a little bit about is the title of what we are calling our series. It Happened Right Here. And it's more than just a title. Robin shared with you a little bit my biography. I studied photography at RIT, which is the Rochester Institute of Technology that is in the shadow of Eastman Kodak in Rochester, New York. I've always loved photography, but I didn't become a photographer per se, still photographer, because I didn't think I was very good at it. And, you know, but I do love photography. I love old photos and their record of kind of documenting American culture. And of course, being from RIT, I have a soft spot in my heart for Kodak and the advent of the Brownie camera that really documented life between 1900 and 1940, say. Those snapshots allowing everyday people to capture their lives just in little moments is fascinating to me. And I love to try to incorporate that into all of these pieces. I'd love to share a little bit. Give me one moment. In every piece that we do, I like to include what I call before and after vignettes, where if I'm lucky enough to find a photo and I can go find the very spot that photo exists, that's just a huge thrill for me. This from Minot, this beautiful classic photo, I stood in the very spot that the photographer stood. When I can find old businesses that you know, life goes on that very city street, and there it is today. And it's just my way, my love of trying to link the past and the present, and I try to include one of these in every video. You know, who were these people? What were their lives like? What happened to them right after that picture was taken? Where is this right now? So these then and now moments are really important to me. The other aspect of that is, I'll just leave you with one last thing. My hero, as you can imagine, is Ken Burns, the great documentary filmmaker, and his use of still photos, of course, is legendary with Civil War and all the work that he's done. But he describes his use of still photos as an energetic exploring of these images, trying to will them alive, trusting that they had a past and a future to the arrested moment that they represent. Now, if that isn't poetry, I don't know what is. But anyway, that's my philosophy behind creating these videos. The next thing I'd like to share with you is just what I'm calling along the way. There are a couple moments that I've experienced in the last year and a half doing these, and now I just realized two of them involve cemeteries. And I didn't mean to make this a cemetery tour per se, but I guess if you're going to do stuff on history, you're going to have a cemetery or two. But the first one was in Devil's Lake, and excuse me, I lost my place. The Sons of Jacob Cemetery, east of Starkweather, North Dakota. Now, aside from being just this dramatic thing, this little speck in the middle of nowhere, what has struck me really is the people in the town. Certainly a lot of people have relations, distant relations that are buried there, but many people do not. They really have no relation to it. And they really come together to take care of this little speck of land. They're very proud of it. They're just wonderful stewards of this sacred ground. And it's just always been really, really touching to me. And, you know, I can't help but share one of my favorite shots of doing this is the approach to Sons of Jacob Cemetery as you drive, you know, off the county road. And one of the gentlemen in that picture that I was showing you was a neighbor. And you'd think the neighboring farms would find this cemetery kind of a pain. It's in the middle of their farm, and you know it's just a pain to work around. But that gentleman, when one of the grave markers blew away, and they're not all stone, some are made out of tin. One of them blew away and ended up in his field. And he took the time to take the grave marker, bring it back, and make sure it found its way into the proper grave. And that's what neighbors do. And I just found that very, very moving. The next stop on our journey is the Amola Movement. And it's funny how the Jews who are buried at Sons of Jacob, they were Jewish homestead farmers. Now, their story, mostly that they didn't really know what they were getting into. And of course, they had a pretty miserable time at it, and they left after, you know, a few years. Some stayed, but most left. There was another movement called the Amola Movement. And my apologies to those who know French better. I say Crémeux. These Jews were from Russia. And they were very enthusiastic about farming. They couldn't do it in Russia because they couldn't own land. And they wanted to farm the land in the Dakotas. So they found some land. And Robin had shared with me this map from a some historic history book. And it's pretty crude. The distances aren't very discernible. So what I did last summer on an excursion out to the Dakotas is we kind of cross-referenced it with Google Maps, and you know, putting Mitchell, South Dakota, and Mount Vernon, and then trying to figure out the distance between the two, and then somewhere south is where this settlement was. And you know, I was anxious to go there. I was driving there with my daughter, and I think I found it. You know, we got pretty close, at least as close as we could figure out. So again, my daughter and I were very excited that we had gone this way, and I was going to come back and I was going to tell Robin, I think we were there. I'm 99% sure I put my feet on that very ground where those Jewish farmers worked the land. So we were just about to wrap up and leave. And down the road, I see a pickup truck coming. And I think, oh boy, I'm not even sure if this is trespassing or not. I'm off the county road. I'm clearly on someone's land. I hope this isn't a problem. As it turns out, the guy was a farmer who owned the land. He's a very nice guy. And of course, he asked me, what are we doing there? And I kind of babbled my way through telling him, trying to say, well, I'm a videographer. I work with the Jewish Historical Society. We're doing this project on the Dakotas, and talking to him like he's a third grader, saying, it's hard to imagine, but there were Jewish farmers near here. And he stopped me and said, oh yeah, I know. My great grandfather bought the land from there. You're standing on it. So that was just kind of a funny thing. And that was the gentleman there. His name is Jim. And I was about 50 yards away from it, and he pointed me to the right place, and that's where we ended up. So we ended up finding it. So I could be honest with Rob and say I stood there. The next part of the journey, something that was just very meaningful. It's really where everything started for me, and that was in Ashley, North Dakota, a number of years ago, when I was asked to document the dedication of the small Jewish homesteaders cemetery there. It brought together a lot of things. The people I knew, Rebecca Bender, who wrote the wonderful book, Still. I had known Rebecca's sister, Nancy Bender-Kellner, and of course, the Grossmans have ties to that cemetery. So it was very special to me to go there and document it. And there were two things that really struck me about that experience, is that, number one, when I was asked to do it, I thought, well, I will go there, maybe there'll be 10 people, 20 people, who's going to make the trip out, who's left to even, honor these people. I was absolutely amazed that it seemed like the entire town of Ashley turned out to be there, because all of their ancestors, all of their parents and grandparents and great grandparents knew all these people, and they came out to kind of honor it with the small group of family members that were there. And I was just very, very struck by that. And I guess the other moment that I'll share with you is after the group that you're looking at, after the ceremony was done, there was a little reception down the road, and everybody was cleaning up and being on their way. And I went to get some shots. And about 2 minutes later, boy, everyone cleared out immediately. About 2 minutes later, I turned around and found that I was the only person there. And talk about quiet. I don't know that I have ever experienced quiet like that, to stand in the middle of that cemetery. And I'll leave you just with my favorite time lapse. And that is my quick tour. And I think, Robin, if we wanted to bring up some questions, and again, my disclaimer is I'm not a historian, but I'll do my best to answer any questions just about how we work.
Okay, thank you so much, Dale. Really lovely.
I didn't set a clock. I don't know if I was fast or slow. It seems like about 2 hours have gone by.
No, you're fantastic. And I have some comments and some questions. So the first one from Burl Radin, and Burl grew up in Aberdeen, South Dakota, and has lived out east for many, many years. But she was part of our second panel of our 3-part Jewish Women series, and really excellent addition to that, an author of a memoir about entitled Leaving South Dakota, about her experience. So Burl says, this is a wonderful opportunity to focus on issues that are rarely covered. And she said she really encouraged us, those of us who are out there looking, digging, doing the work, to be attentive to the differences that they find in their work. She said, I think there's a tendency to think there's a single story something that would be very rare for anything Jewish. And I would agree, Jewish or not Jewish. These are stories for sure. And then Burrell goes on to state, you know, a lot of some of these differences, you go back far enough, you see what the immigrants brought with them, very different experiences and different expectations and that sort of thing. So thank you, Burrell. And then I have some questions, and let me.
You know, while you're queuing those up, Robin.
Yeah.
I think that's an interesting, that's an important distinction. As I kind of stumbled through it, but there are so many stories, and it's such a deep ocean. Every city, every town, obviously there's all the family history, and I sometimes find myself, I don't know, not necessarily apologizing. I don't think anyone is asking me to apologize for not going into their family history or that person. What we're doing here is trying to kind of stay on the surface to have the most general, open, want to get as many people into the tent, if you will, and to try to make it as, I don't like to use the word generic, but once you get too deep into any one thing, then you kind of, I think you tend to lose the rest of the crowd. So we try not to get too deep into specific family histories, of course, unless it's, you know, a family of note, significant, you know.
Yeah, and I really think, Dale, to that point, as we do the, you know, 20,000 foot overview, we're seeing so many more specific roads we can go down. And I really see our partnership with you. No obligation here, but I see that we could do this forever, that there are so many stories out there to share and many roads to go down. So,
and I'm hoping, I bet a lot of people have suggestions, is my hope.
Absolutely. Okay, we have another question, and that is, what was the most unexpected item you found in the archives when you're doing your research? Unexpected. I guess the image itself wasn't unexpected, but the biggest joy that I had, the most fun that I had is, and you saw it as I showed you the before and afters. It's from, and I'm sorry, I don't remember the name of the synagogue, from Minot. All these people on a bridge. And I remember I found it in the archive. It was a couple of weeks before I was going to go up there. And I was looking at it, saying, "Wow, that's amazing! All these people in their high holiday best, whatever that was, in 1901, whenever that picture was taken." And I thought, boy, that'd be pretty great to see it. So I went up to Minot, and I found the synagogue, certainly, and I'm staring at it and say, "Wow!" And when I have the picture, I said, I wish I could figure out where this bridge was. And I literally turned to my right and like, oh, there it is. I don't know why I didn't think to, maybe I drove a certain way or drove up to it. I didn't see it when I got out of the car, but that was just this gift from heaven. I thought it was like, wow, this could not be more perfect. And that was fun. Yeah, that is a wonderful photograph. And what I love about it is that the handwriting is in Yiddish, and it shows that they're actually doing tashlich, that this is
right
at Rosh Hashanah when they're doing a tashlich service. So it makes sense that they were on a bridge near a body of water.
Here, I'm gonna cue that up for you, just so take a look at it. But yeah, and it just matches so well. You don't, very little has changed. I'm sure the bridge has changed, the decking has changed, but boy, they just fit there. And it's like they just came out of 100 years ago. And I love that. I love that so much.
Great. That's great. Okay, we have more questions. Ralph Bernberg asks, how long does a typical story take to complete in time, please?
In human years, or longer than I thought it would. And I guess it's hard to say, because certainly COVID slowed the world down, but it this whole process in my mind has gone about twice as long as I had hoped. And that's why my hat's off to researchers, people who just spend hours and hours and hours reading through material that maybe after the end of the day, they don't have anything, but they'll have to go back the next day and read through more stuff. So it's not like it just automatically comes. So I have such respect for the people who do that all day long. I don't have the patience, or I've learned that I need to work on that patience. But, you know, it's a lot of hours in the research, you know, a lot of hours traveling, a lot of hours shooting. And then certainly when I sit down with it all, I call it the 10,000 piece jigsaw puzzle that you spill out on the dining room table. You just kind of start saying, oh, this is kind of nice here. And I remember this interview, they talked about that. So I'm going to put that there. And then it, you know, hard to put a number on it, but a while, takes a while.
Great, thank you. Let's see. So I had one, excuse me, I have to just toggle over here. One moment. All right. So when you're in the archives and doing some research, say at the Upper Midwest Jewish Archives, there's so many potential rabbit holes to just fall down. How do you decide what bits to include in your videos and try to keep the video really tight?
Well, that's a good question. And I'll take one step back in terms of what to include in the videos. The videos themselves, you know, we start out with kind of this high level of what our goals are. We want to tell this story with just this story. But maybe the biggest criteria I have in doing these, and I'll deny saying this, it's if I have something to show. If I don't have a picture of something, if we can talk about all the great topics and wonderful, you know, moments and things that should be included, if there's no picture of it, I have a problem. I'm in trouble. That's what makes editors sweat, and that is just having no visual. That's why you'll see in a number of my videos, there's kind of abstractions. We create imagery, a lot of maps, a lot of words, a lot of graphics that hopefully fill in the blanks and tell the story. But having images of something, that's usually the start of it. If I see an image and say, that is a great image, what is the story behind this? I'd like to use it and tell it.
Great, thank you. Thank you. Let me go back into my question.
Well, one more note, and I said I wasn't going to say this, but I'm on a roll. And again, this is only love and respect to all my my writer colleagues, all my people out there who write. You can sit down and you can do the research and you can write a beautiful 100-page manuscript. You don't need any pictures for that. You can just write and people will read it, hopefully. It's not the same. If you're setting out to make a video, you need something to see.
Okay, terrific. So from Rabbi Norman Cohen, Dale, your presentation was, as always, outstanding. You may not call yourself a scholar, but the way you research for accuracy and interest makes you quite scholarly. Your stories today reminded me of my American Jewish history professor, Dr. Jacob Rader Marcus, who said, "There is never a first Jew anywhere." Thank you, Rabbi Cohen.
And yes, thank you, Rabbi. One thought on that, because that was something that if I had a category of things I've learned as a East Coast Jew moving to the Midwest, is that so much of what when I first started working this, I was fascinated by finding who was the first Jew, who was the first one to set foot in this territory. And we touched on that a little bit because there was someone, Mordecai Samuel, and we told that story. But more importantly, what the gentle pushback that I got is save the surprise about Jews being here. Of course there are Jews here. There's Jews everywhere. And I've learned, and I feel badly for projecting that thought, at least in the early years here, because again, I say I'm from the East Coast. I'm not from the East Coast. I'm from Buffalo, which is not the East Coast, but it's there. And growing up, I just had the assumption that every single Jew in America basically came into the Lower East Side and then went from there. That was their launching board. But we, Robin, you and I have done a number of interviews with people when posed that, say, were there any other, Jews around? And they said, well, of course there were Jews. There weren't a lot. Maybe it was us and another couple people, but of course there were Jews.
Great, thank you. Let me just look here. Let's see, Rebecca Bender says, we're so thankful for you that you've shared your talents, Dale, and documented the rededication at Ashley Jewish Homesteaders Cemetery. Just like the pictures you treasure, we, the descendants, treasure your work. And from Rebecca Bender, which is lovely. Thank you, Rebecca. And Rebecca, along with her late father, published a wonderful book, Still, which I recommend highly. We have lots of authors among us today.
And again, no disrespect to my friends who are authors. I want to be clear on that.
All right, let me see here. How about this one? What advice would you give to people, their families, how to preserve their own history?
I think the number one, two rules. One is organization. An organization drives whatever. There's a word, I think, for not being discouraged after seeing the mountain of something. The whole takes one step. Do a little at a time. If you do a little at a time, somehow you get momentum, and then things start making sense, and then you can start putting things in order. But I think every home, and the whole nother topic, but I talked a little bit about photography, the idea of snapshots. Every home in America, at least now, probably not for long, every home in America has the box of photos. That is, you pull it out every now and then, you rummage through it, and you put it back in the closet. And in the heyday of photography, when Americans were documenting their lives that way, in a generation, or if we aren't there now, there will be no photos. No one will have. I mean, you'll have it on your phone. Hopefully, you don't lose your phone. But the future of how we document our lives, I think, is a fascinating question for another topic. But my advice to someone trying to do it is start small. Take a handful of photos, make 4 piles.
Great, thank you, Dale. So this is an interesting one. How are Dale's stories selected? So I'll let Dale talk, and I have a couple ideas also.
Well, I think I don't like the term lowest hanging fruit, because none of it's low hanging fruit. But what made the most sense to me, and there is no right and wrong here, we just, whatever we're doing, we try to make sense of it. What made the most sense to me starting out is geography, is to say, and at first we had Minneapolis and St. Paul as kind of one thing, and we realized, as we thought about it a little bit more, no, they're really 2 very different stories. They should be different. So, okay, geography, Minneapolis, one on St. Paul. The Dakotas, no offense to anyone in North and South Dakota, I kind of put that together in a geographical area. That story, and Robin, I think you were the one to enlighten me on this. That story isn't necessarily North and South Dakota. It's kind of East and West. But that could be one story. And again, Duluth and the Iron Range, that's a lot of geography. But I think once we get past this first, I'll say, round of videos, there's a never-ending list of just things that I'm interested in: Jewish food, Jewish restaurants, Jewish retailers, Jewish practicing of law, medicine, how Mount Sinai Temple was built. We could spend an hour, and I'm sure everyone has many great ideas. That's kind of how we do it. The first round was kind of geography based. Oh, I'm sorry. And then the two more we're doing before the end of the year, they have a theme, and that is Jewish summer camps and what we're calling, to repair the world. Basically how Jews helped themselves when they first arrived, but then also how they began helping the rest of the world, their community.
Yes, and I would agree, as we go from like the really high level and start kind of drilling down, there's just endless numbers of things, Jews in medicine, Jews who made medical devices, Jews who, just really, we can go on for a long time. So it's terrific. And it's so much fun. So we have a comment from Lori Delman, who says her husband's great-grandfather homesteaded at Painted Woods, which is North Dakota, and that she met the current landowners. Let's see, she said she gave them a copy of the homestead document, and then they showed her the land abstract of the sale. Let me see what else. It gave me let's see. So she had some time with the current owners who owned this land, saw some of the historical documents, and these people were also very interested. So interesting. So yeah, Painted Woods, that was another of the
Right. I think the major the three were the Garski community north of Devil's Lake, Painted Woods, and the Amola movement.
Yeah, very nice. So that's really interesting to be able to go back, and the story you told, meeting the person who had bought the land from the Jews. Very interesting. So let me see if we have more questions or comments. We may have hit them all. I just need to go into one more place. So when you're doing stories, is there a way that you determine which year to start and when to stop? It must be kind of difficult to make that determination.
It is for me, and you and I and all of us have kind of discussed the merits of where does this begin and where does this end. It was a little easier to focus the narrative on, for lack of a better word, what we call the pioneer, really the beginning, late 1800s or mid 1800s was where there was a very little bit of Jewish activity, to certainly the major immigration of the late 1880s and the early 20th century. There are a couple of videos where we discuss people who really were much further into the 20th century. The Herman Stern, who was a store owner in North Dakota, that was kind of a World War II story. But for the most part, the early part of the 20th century and late part of the 19th century. Again, for the beginning, my hope is, down the road we'll find different pockets of time to focus on, because there's no rules.
Yep. Wonderful. Well, Dale, thank you. This was wonderful. We are so fortunate to have you, and I think everyone who's with us today now understands why we feel that way. So thank you. And thank you all for attending our annual meeting. And I am going to turn this back over to Jamie Heilicher, our board president, who has a few words in conclusion.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us and watching how Dale puts all these wonderful films together. I think that we've come to the conclusion that it is critical to tell these stories in videos as we move forward. The next generations, if it's not on their phone, if it's not on the screen, they're not as interested. And so we're going to do everything we can to bring out every one of these stories we can possibly create and identify and research and be proud of being part of this community. With that said, again, as always, thank you for your past support. Ask you to continue to support this organization. History is a critical part of our community, not only learning from our history, but being proud of the past in our history, and give us a reason why we want to be part of this community. So again, please maintain your membership. If you're not a member, please join us, and think of us when you're making your contributions every year. Think of us through legacy grants and legacy gifts. And we are working on finding a permanent home for the organization, and we'll be looking for help to make that a realization. And again, thank you all for coming. And that's all I've got. Thank you again.